Hello, and welcome to Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Programs for Minors Procedures. My name is Darlene Locke. I'm an Extension Specialist Youth Development and oversee programs for minors for AgriLife Extension. First of all, let's begin with what is a Programs for Minors. And understand that this is all aligned with the Texas A&M System Rule 24.01.06. It was revised in October of 2024, and we have our parallel Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Rule 24.01.06.x1 that was revised and effective September 1, 2025. So again, these are rules, and as employees, we are required to adhere to these policies and procedures. So a few things that came out in the system rule is that programs for minors are any program sponsored by or conducted under the direction of AgriLife Extension, and that these are provided in a safe, nurturing environment. Programs for minors is where a member or third-party program using AgriLife or non-AgriLife facilities where the participants are minors. The minor is defined as any individual under the age of 18. However, this does not include individuals who are currently enrolled or employed at a Texas A&M member institution. Member programs are those programs that are sponsored and or operated by system members, such as AgriLife Extension, and where the full supervisory duties of the minors are the system members' responsibility. So you're going to see this a number of times throughout the presentation, but it's one of the foundational determinants of whether it is a programs for minors, and that is who has care, custody, control of the minor participants. If it's AgriLife, then it is a programs for minors, and we are to follow all procedures. Third-party programs, again, those are programs of an individual or an entity not affiliated with a system member that uses system property or facilities. So you could think of things like Texas Parks and Wildlife using the facilities to conduct a hunter education program. They would have full care, custody, and it is not our programs for minors. It would be on Parks and Wildlife and whatever their procedures are for programs for minors. Another example would be the County Livestock Show. AgriLife Extension is not providing full supervisory duty of the youth participants. Now, in the AgriLife Extension rule, where you see the term program manager, this is the designated AgriLife Extension employee overseeing that particular program for minors, event, activity, camp, or program. So this individual, the program manager, is responsible for ensuring that all requirements are met, information is reported in form site when required, and that documentation is retained accordingly. Still in the definition space, programs for minors does not include programs where full supervisory duties of the minors are the responsibility of the minor's parents, designee, legal guardian, teachers, or official chaperones who are not member employees. Also does not include where the minor's involvement is ancillary to the intended purpose of the activity. An example of this might be an agricultural field day where a youth attends with their parent, grandparent, a ranch hand, whatever. Just because there are youth there does not mean it's a programs for minors. It all goes back to who has care, custody, and control. So the next few slides are going to be 6 items that are required of all programs for minors and youth activities. I'm going to go over each of these 6 in a little more detail, uh, just so that everyone is fully aware of what's required. So the first one is limiting communication. And what that really means is that except for parent-child relationships, communication, including by social media and gaming, between minors and adult staff outside the official program communications is prohibited. So keep it professional. Your communication, especially through social media and gaming with youth, should be only about the event, the activity, the program. And then you also want to make sure that all adults contributing to the program are informed of these procedures. The second item is a mandatory reporting of abuse, molestation, neglect, or inappropriate digital photos. This has always been in place, but not sure that everyone fully understands the uh, the breadth of it. So Texas Family Code Chapter 261 requires any person having cause to believe that a child's physical or mental health or welfare has been adversely affected by abuse or neglect are to immediately make a report to law enforcement. That's your first place. The second one is you want to then follow up and fill out an online report with the Department of Family and Protective Services at the link provided. And then thirdly, you want to notify the Director of AgriLife Ethics and Compliance at the email listed. And again, all adults involved in the program should be aware of these procedures. When you're reporting to the AgriLife Ethics and Compliance, that is their way of knowing that as an employee with mandatory reporting requirements, you are doing as you are required. So it is not our place to question what has been provided to us about a youth being abused or neglected. It is not our place to investigate. It is our responsibility to report it to the three places I've already shared and get it off your plate. Let others do the questioning and the investigation. You are protected. I know that we often have feelings of fear because these charges, I'm sorry, not charges, these um, reports are serious. You may be apprehensive or have concern because of people that you know, whatever. It doesn't matter. Report it, get it off your plate because the consequences of failing to report are actually a Class A misdemeanor. So follow through, report to the three entities, and then although it's not in the rule, I would probably report it to my supervisor and probably the District 4-H specialist, just so that they are aware. Now, if you have the third item is mandatory reporting of any incidents or accidents that occur. These are things that are minor to major physical injuries to either participants or program staff. It may include a hospital or doctor's visit, but you want to fill out this incident uh, injury report form as soon as possible with as much detail as possible. And then you're going to send it to the Texas 4-H office at the address provided. Notify your supervisor that you've done so. And then the 4-H office is going to upload the report within 48 hours to the System Risk Management Origami portal. So again, that's a mandatory reporting requirement. Now, if you have behavioral issues with youth participants, you are going to continue to follow procedures outlined in the Texas 4-H rules and guidelines, the code of conduct, and the consequences of misbehavior. The fourth item that you want to know of procedures regarding is handling of medication. So per the 4-H rules and guidelines, members or their parents are to let program management know in detail any health issues, special needs, or allergies that may prevent them from fully participating or that pose a risk to themselves or other participants. Okay. Also keep in mind for all of these information regarding medication, you should protect and hold those forms in confidence because they are HIPAA protected forms. All right. So handling medication. Now, at your event, program, or activity, you may not be handling medication, but you still need to be aware of these procedures because some of them do pertain to you even if you're not taking medication from youth. So, first off, who administers medication? Ideally, you would have a nurse or a designated first aid person that would be at your event, and the medication would go through them. However, we know that that's usually not the case. And more often than not, we, as the AgriLife employee, are handling those medications. So there are some forms for you to use, and I will go over those. But the one thing to keep always in mind is, well, two things. One, you must always have authorization from a parent or guardian to give medication. And then two, any medication that a youth or an adult brings to a program should be in its original container with the instructions on for the prescription. So the first form that's available to you is called the authorization to dispense medication. And this is where you are going to obtain authorization from the parent to dispense whatever medication that the youth is bringing to the event. I'll show you a photo of that in just a moment. You want to verify that the form is signed and dated, and then over to the, well, I'll show you where you would then report or record what is actually provided to youth. Keep in mind that anytime a participant has an inhaler, an epinephrine, auto-injector, an insulin, those type of items need to stay with the participant at all times. Also note that in the event of a medical emergency to prevent death or serious bodily injury, we can dispense whatever is needed without authorization for these extreme cases, provided that the medication is administered as prescribed, directed, or intended. All right, so here's what the ADM looks like. Again, it's going to have the participant's name, any food allergies, and then any medications that they are bringing to the event, the dosage, when to give it, any other instructions, and then in this gray box is where you would record that medication was provided to the participant. Again, make sure that the parent guardian name is there, that they've signed it, and that it has the date. The next form that you can use is an over-the-counter medication. Being mindful that we should never give youth medication, even over the counter, without authorization. This OTC form is going to help you with that incident. So a child comes to you with cramps, headache, muscle spat, whatever. Never give them medication unless you have authorization. And so the form looks like this, and you can see that there are a number of common over-the-counter type medications that a parent can signify, yes, that their child can receive it. And then when that youth comes to you and asks for some form of medication, you want to review this form again before you hand out, because there are over-the-counter medications that can produce allergic reactions. And so you never want to give a youth medication without authorization. The next form is called the self-administration of medication, or the SAP, and this can be used with youth who are 14 years of age and in the ninth grade at minimum, and they would then be allowed to keep the medication on their person and take it as necessary. Again, the medication must be in its original container with the participant's information on it and the dosage information. This is what that form looks like. Um, Again, it's the discretion of the program manager whether or not to allow youth to keep medication on their person. If you've got a program where you've got kids from third grade up through 12th grade, you may decide that it's easier for you or your designee to keep all medication instead of having some keep it and others hand it in. So that's strictly up to the program manager whether or not to use the SAP. All right, the next item required is liability and accident insurance. So a good thing is that if your program is only open to approved Texas 4-H youth through 4-H Online and volunteers that are registered in 4-H Online. You really don't have to do anything because they are already covered by a limited accident medical insurance policy. It's when you open the program to other youth and other adults that it may be necessary for you to purchase additional accident medical policy to cover those participants. American Income Life is one vendor. There are other vendors where you can purchase this type of participant insurance for an event. The sixth item that's required of all programs is the waiver, indemnification, and medical treatment authorization. This is to be collected from all youth, volunteers, and employees. And as of September 1, the youth, when enrolling in 4-H Online, will complete the waiver. Now, if you are hosting or sponsoring an event where there's additional specific risk, it may be necessary to require additional waivers. So I'll show you a screenshot of that in a second, but on this waiver, you can customize it with your program name and the date, and you would want to put inclusive date. So if it's multiple days, you want to make sure you have the beginning and ending date on that form. And in section 2, which is the indemnity clause, if there are specific risks above average participation, you want to list those here. You can insert them into the form. So if you're going to do things like zip lining or whitewater rafting, domestic or foreign travel, those things constitute needing to do a separate waiver and indemnification. So on that form, which I'll pop up now, on that form, here is where you can customize it to put the program name and the dates of the program. Here in section 2 is where you can insert those specific higher risk items that will be engaged in by the participants. And then on this second page of the document is a place for them to provide an emergency contact name and phone number. You want to verify that that's there, and then you want to verify that the signatures from the parent guardian are in place and the dates. Note that this form was revised in July of 2025, so you want to use that form. Now, we know, we realize that you could be working with youth every day of your employment. Unfortunately, those who write the rules don't always fully understand that this is our job and this is our mission, working with youth. We know that you have programs that meet weekly, programs that might have 1 youth or 20 youth, but it is important that we have these standardized procedures in place to hopefully make this easier to manage. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service has designated 2 levels of programs for minors activities. I'm going to explain these 2 levels, but unfortunately, there's always going to be gray area. So if you're not certain if your program is a level 1 or a level 2, please contact your district 4-H specialist and or myself. So now we'll look at these level 1 and level 2 activities. And remember, those first 6 items that I just discussed, those are required of all programs. A level 1 program is going to be those that have lower risk. Some examples include, but are not limited to, day camps, a workshop where you have a speaker, chartered 4-H club and or project meetings and practices, arts and crafts sort of activities, hosting school field trips. The key is that the parent or legal guardians or their designee are present. AgriLife Extension employees do not serve as chaperones and do not have full supervisory responsibilities when it's a level 1 program. The adult to youth ratio for level 1 is 1 to 25, noting that no adult should ever be 1-to-1 with a youth. To make this very clear to your clientele, you may start inserting a statement such as suggested here. Youth under the age of 18 are to be supervised by the parent, guardian, or designee. Texas A&M AgriLife Extension is not providing supervision for this event. Now, level 2, these are going to be our moderate to higher risk activities, may include, but not limited to, events with one or more overnight stays, shooting sports activities, live animal activities, programs with a moderate level of physical activity, transporting youth domestically, out of state, out of country. The key being that the parent or guardian is not present and extension has full supervisory responsibility. For these level 2 programs, the adult to youth ratio is going to be 1 to 8, and again, noting that no adult should ever be 1 to 1 with a youth. Shooting sports, we realize that most of the time, I think probably 99% of the time, the adult is going to be present. That's a requirement in a lot of the counties. But because of the risk involved, we are still labeling it a level 2, even though the parents are probably there. So now for all level 1 and level 2, these 4 additional items are required. And again, all documentation is to be collected and kept in a secure location for 6 years. That is our document retention schedule for all programs for minors documentation. So for both level 1 and level 2, the event, activity, camp, or program needs to be in the program manager's plan of work within the tamed system. There should be criminal background checks on direct volunteers and employees. There should be an ADA accommodation statement, and there should be completion of child protection training. So let me explain ADA accommodation statement. This is not the EEO statement that says something to the effect AgriLife Extension programs are open to all regardless of disability, race, blah, blah, blah. That is the EEO statement. What you should also be including in all of your promotional materials, your marketing materials, for both adult and youth programs is a request for accommodation, a statement allowing participants to request accommodations. And so there is an example provided. Also note that these requests for reasonable accommodations are to be considered on an individual basis. They do not guarantee that the accommodation requested will be met, but we do need to make sure that individuals have the opportunity to request accommodations through including a statement, something to this effect. Child protection training is required of all employees and volunteers every 2 years. And as the program manager, you want to verify the date that those adult participants or helpers or coordinators, whatever you want to call them, that their child protection training is current for the date when the activity is going to be conducted. So employee records can be obtained through TrainTrack. Volunteer records can be downloaded from 4-H Online. On the 4-H website and the AgriLife intranet site, there are instructions for how you can download that information on volunteers from 4-H Online. So again, for level 1 and level 2, we have the first items that I went over, and then level 1 requires these additional 4 items. If it's a level 2 activity, then it's going to require some, I think 5 or 6 additional ones, and we'll go over those now. So health and safety statement. The health and safety statement must be collected from each participant, youth and adult, to ensure that program staff are aware of recent injuries, known allergies, and the current health status. One thing to be mindful of is that as you collect this information from your participants, that you have a systematic review of those forms and that you note any known allergies, recent injuries, that would affect the way a young person or an adult participates in the event. Okay, so don't just collect the information and stick it in a folder. You need to review the information and make note of any issues that are relevant to a person's participation in your event. Note that this form was updated in June of 2025, Also note that if your event has multiple days, then you could collect this the first time that you have face-to-face interaction, and then in subsequent times, you can just have the parent or guardian review and initial, make any changes necessary, and then review and initial it. So that's just one way of reducing uh, some of the paperwork that you're requesting from your families. The risk assessment matrix should be completed during the planning phase for your level 2 programs. And this is just our intentional effort to consider all the possible risk, the associated seriousness of it, the probability that it might happen. You are to complete this form listing all of those potential risks. There is a second page if you need to go beyond these. And then as you list those risks and you list what you're going to do to mitigate the risk, um, then you would just keep this with all of your other programs for minors documentation. But an example might be swimming. That is a risk. What are our mitigation for swimming? You might have lifeguards present. You may have boundaries defined. You may have adults in the water serving as aides. Whatever that mitigation is, you want to be sure you're listing it as well. The next item are job descriptions. There are examples of those on the AgriLife intranet and the 4-H website. So pull one of those examples off, customize it for your event, and then make sure to share it with the other adults assisting with the program. Also on the site, you have some overnight program guidelines and also a very specific overnight one-page information tip sheet. The supervision ratio, I talked about that as we identified the two levels. Now, with level 1 programs, the 1 to 25 adult to youth ratio is acceptable. For level 2 programs, we're still using that 1 to 8. And again, make sure that all adults in the program are aware of these ratios and that all adults in the program are also aware that there should never be one adult to one youth alone. For every program, you should have a formal written agenda of all activities, which I'm sure you do. You don't have to necessarily have the times that each activity occurs, but there should be a list of all activities that are going to be conducted within that event, program, or camp. You also want to have a roster of all participants, and then you would identify the participants as either a youth, an adult, volunteer, or an AgriLife Extension employee. So keep these with all of your other programs for minors documentation. And then the last form uh, for level 2 programs, and this would only apply to those that have 20 or more youth that occur for at least any part of 4 days. If your program meets those two criteria, then you're going to fill out this form, which is basically listing the names of all the adults helping with the program and the date that they completed that child protection training. And then you're going to submit it to the Department of State Health Services at the address provided on the form. The very last thing you're going to do with level 2 programs only is to report in FormSite that you have complied with the Programs for Minors rule. So also know that this site serves as the registry of all AgriLife Extension programs for minors, events, camps, activities, and programs. And should there be a reason to conduct an investigation, the first place the system risk investigation team will come is to this registry to make sure that that program was indeed uh, in our registry of events for the year. So here's a kind of a screenshot look at what that will look like. You would click on this bar, um, either from the AgriLife intranet site or the 4-H website, and then you're going to submit your information as a user or a new user, and then you're going to get this page where you're going to fill out the specific information about the program, event, camp, or activity. The program manager, again, that's the person in charge of the event. Their name goes here, their title, and their email address. You're going to indicate whether it's a county, district, state, or national level program. And then this box is some of you may have an administrative assistant or a volunteer fill out the form for you. That is perfectly okay. But we want their name in this box, but the box with program manager is the one that has ultimate responsibility for the event. You're going to give the name of the camp or the activity. You're going to give the beginning, ending date, where it was held, how many days, if there were overnight stays, how many participants, how many volunteers, how many employees. And then the question is, did the program have 20 or more minors participating for any part of 4 or more days? Yes or no? Then on the next page is where you are going to attest yes or no. So drop down a selection here of either yes or no that you complied with all of the procedures that we just reviewed for those level 2 programs. Once this is completed, you will get an email copy of it, and I will get an email copy, and it goes into our FormSite database registry. So if you have any questions about programs for minors, please contact first your District 4-H specialist. And then if we need to go and have some additional consultation, they'll reach out to me. But again, we want to ensure that our youth and our employees and our volunteers um, have the opportunity to participate in these youth programs and activities, but we also want to make sure that we're doing it in a standardized way. So thank you for your attendance today, and have a good day.